Next up is hearing. All right, so a little bit of physics here. Frequency is the number of waves passing through a fixed point in given time, and we measure frequency in a unit called hertz. Frequency determines the pitch that we hear. The higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. So it's a low frequency would be like oh, and a high frequency would be like ee. Okay, so that changes the number of waves per second that are passing through a certain point. Now, the height of those waves is what codes in our brain the amplitude or the intensity, which equates to volume in our brain. Okay, so the height of the waves is amplitude. We call that intensity, and that's how we hear. We measure that intensity, that loudness, in a unit called the decibel. And the decibel is a logarithmic scale, which means that the difference between 1 decibel and 2 decibels is not 1 unit, it's actually 10 times. Okay. All right. So we are sensitive to sounds. A 0 decibel level is not the absence of sound, it is the lowest sound that most normal people can hear. Okay. We adjust this for normal hearing people. We usually a quiet whisper, a quiet conversation, it's about 30 decibels. We usually talk at about 55 decibels. Okay. That's our conversational speech. Notice this scale as we get up higher, around like 70 to 80 decibels. Well, if the sound is continuous, then we can start having damage. Okay, so busy traffic, a noisy restaurant for a long period of time can damage your hearing. As we get higher in intensity, the higher the decibel level of the sound, the less time it takes for damage to happen. So look up there at heavy metal rock concert, 120 decibels, immediate danger. Wow, okay? No wonder a lot of the rock stars are walking around deaf now. Huey Lewis of Huey Lewis in the News, 80s band, okay, can't perform anymore because his hearing has been so damaged. He can't hear himself sing. He can't hold a tune anymore. Notice that a rocket launching pad, it says hearing loss inevitable. Okay, that's why they keep people miles away from it. Okay, so please protect your hearing. As an audiologist, I will say that the youngest person I ever diagnosed with noise-induced hearing loss was an 11-year-old. And it's because he was blasting his iPod headphones, okay? If somebody else can hear it, it's too loud in your ears. Okay, off my soapbox. All right, so what happens is those sound pressure waves are caught by the external ear and they are funneled towards that tympanic membrane. And when the tympanic membrane moves, the bones that are attached to it will also move. Okay? And when they move, they are concentrating the sound, and that stapes, the footplate of the stapes, sits in an opening to the bony inner ear called the oval window. And it presses in on the oval window and is acting like that pebble into a pond effect. So it creates ripples in the fluid. Now, those ripples are very small ripples, right? The tiny hair cells in the inner ear with the short little stereocilia are very sensitive to small changes in the pressure in the fluid. That big old kinocilium and those longer cilia in the equilibrium organ, which is attached, and these ripples are flooding that way too, they don't move with such a tiny disturbance, so they're not stimulated by sound waves, even though it's the same fluid. Now, at some point, okay, the basilar membrane changes in its wideness from the base to the top. If you remember the picture of the cross section of the cochlea, as we got closer and closer to the top, the tunnels got tinier and tinier. So that basilar membrane gets shorter and shorter. At some point along the way, okay, the mass of the basilar membrane matches the distorting power of the pressure wave. Okay, it matches the frequency, and the basilar membrane is going to move. Now, the basilar membrane is moving because the wave's coming by anyway, but it's not moving very much. But as we go from a wide basilar membrane down to a smaller one, at some point it's going to find that like sweet spot. And that part's going to move a lot more. And when it moves, it's going to bang those stereocilia up against that tectoral membrane and cause the shearing force that is now going to depolarize the neurons and sensory cells attached to it, and that information about that signal is going to be sent to the brain. And the way we would determine, was that a high-pitched sound or a low-pitched, was that a high frequency or low frequency, is determined based on where in the cochlea it is stimulated. It's kind of like a piano keyboard. If we bang the keys at one end, we get a low sound. If we bang the keys at the other end, we get a high sound. Okay? It's kind of like that. This is called resonance. And one part of the basilar membrane will resonate and move more according to the frequency of sound that is coming into the ear. All right, I'll see you in the next video.